What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to be bringing you guys a wildcard draft for the upcoming Game Week 12. So as I always say with these wildcard draft videos, this video is going to be for basically if you guys are wildcarding, obviously, or if you're not wildcarding as well. I always like to do a little bit of an activity before every single game week. I just kind of create a wildcard draft for that specific team and just see how that differs from your current team selection. This always allows us to kind of plan for the upcoming game weeks, as well as kind of pick out options that we could be bringing in for the next couple game weeks. So if you guys are wildcarding, not wildcarding, this video can still be quite relevant for your own specific team. But in this video, I'll also be touching on some talking points that if you guys are going to be wildcarding, an international break is always quite nice to use your wildcard in, but unfortunately it does come with some kind of negatives, but also comes with a couple of pros. So we'll be covering that before looking at the final draft going into the end of the video. So that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So wildcarding in an international break, as I said, has its negatives and its positives. So I'm going to first talk about kind of the international break scenario and then give you guys some talking points about the upcoming game weeks. So first of all, with an international break, kind of have 2 weeks off. So you guys have to watch those price rises and price drops, which might be a little bit unfortunate if you guys wanted to take a break from the world of FPL. So just monitor those situations. There's a little bit of misinformation about price rises over the international break. You kind of go into the international break expecting a kind of 10 price rises and price drops, but unfortunately that's not the case, and you'll probably only have a couple, and these will come later on into next week. The other thing, if you're wildcarding during international break, I would also monitor the form and the fixtures of the international players. For example, I'm saying the fixtures because maybe a Harry Kane plays against Albania, a team is expected to beat. No offense to kind of Albania there, but you're kind of expecting Harry Kane to do well, but don't let that kind of misinform you about which option to go for, because as I said, these international teams might not be that great, might not be up to the standard of these Premier League teams, and that might give you a little bit of false security in these options. But other than that, you also do have the form. It's always nice to kind of have players that are also scoring an international break, as they might kind of replicate that form with their domestic club. But now kind of going over the more general scenarios about wildcarding. If you are wildcarding Game Week 12, that's quite late on into this first half of the season. Firstly, I just want to say, if you guys have not used your wildcard yet, please, you have to use it before the end of this current year. Don't be that kind of person that burns your wildcard for no reason. And if you guys want a wildcard, even if it is the last game week as possible, I usually have done that in the past couple seasons. That's perfectly a viable strategy to go for, and I would recommend using it at least in this first half of the season. But if you guys are going to be wildcarding in Game Week 12, there are some things that I would kind of take note of. We are in the middle of November, approaching the end of November as the international break comes to an end. So I would really recommend you guys looking ahead to this Christmas period. As you guys know, in the Premier League, if you've watched it or have played FPL before, the Christmas period is absolute madness. And we basically have a midweek session of game weeks and then also a weekend session. So not a lot of rest between these games, so I wouldn't really recommend going with players that are one injury prone or might not be playing that many fixtures in a row. I'm thinking of someone like an Antonio. I don't really think he'll be playing that many games over Christmas and might be rotated once in a while. So on a wildcard, I would kind of recommend going for that, maybe look for some more secured options, and I would also go for quite a strong bench, just because as I mentioned with that rotation over the Christmas period, I would really recommend a strong bench, just so if your starting 11 doesn't feature, you can always have these options off the bench, and hopefully they still would provide you some good returns. But as with any wildcard, I would recommend going for 1 or 2 punts, and I'll talk about them when I show you the draft. As I always think on a wildcard, especially in this first half of the season, you kind of have that safety and security of going with 1 or 2 punts, and then you can make up the points if you lose them in the next couple game weeks. But now going on to the wildcard draft, or at least my wildcard draft if I was to wildcard in Game Week 12. What I've done here is firstly I'm going to be talking over the kind of general structure of this formation. I've gone for a 4-4-2. I think it's probably the strongest formation that this squad can offer. But I've also decided to highlight the prices, as there always is some concern, and I always do have some comments down below asking me what team value I currently do have and the price I bought certain players in. So I decided to just cover this specific team, and then on the next talking point I'll be covering the team approaching that Game Week 12 deadline with the Game Week 12 fixtures. So as I mentioned, a 4-4-2 formation. I'm going to first talk about the bench because we have some nice options in around this bench that I think can get you some points if they have to come off it. So the first one, no surprise there, it's going to be Ben Foster from Watford. I was one of the fortunate people to get him at the start of this season. I think he has had a price rise if you guys weren't able to get him at the start of this season, but at 4.1, still a great kind of option to go for after him winning the place from Bachmann after Bachmann came back from that injury. So Ben Foster, after saving a penalty against Arsenal and Aubameyang, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere, and although the Watford fixtures don't look that great, I mean at 4.1 million, perfectly good kind of cheap option to go for, and I would recommend you guys going for Foster. We then have Juan Livramento and also Douglas Luiz. Now Douglas Luiz, first off, that's just kind of a cheap little budget enabler at 4.5 million. You guys can kind of go for anyone. I would probably recommend going for someone like a Norman, but if Douglas Luiz is fit and back from that injury, I do think he has a place in that Aston Villa starting 11, and I do relatively like his stats. But I guess Norman is a perfectly good option to go for as well from Norwich, and I would probably say go for him if Douglas Luiz is still going to be injured for game week 12. But Huang and Livramento, two great options to go for. Livramento is slightly edging Huang a little bit, and the only reason why Livramento is not on my starting 11 is just because I think most game weeks you probably will opt for one of the attackers over his defensive abilities. Huang seems to have locked down a spot in that Wolves starting 11, and at 5.8 million, great value to go by, and in game week 13 and 14, Wolves have some really nice fixtures coming up. So in terms of the bench, I think just replace Douglas Luiz with Norman if you want to, and I think all three of these options have the potential to at least get you 2 points. And now going on to our starting 11, and the goalkeeper might be a little bit controversial here, but I just wanted to go for quite a cheap option, and I also wanted to tell you guys that I think I had 0.0 in the bank with my current in the bank value. So Guaita is a nice little option at 4.5 million. Unfortunately, Ramsdale was too expensive, and I also didn't want to go for Sanchez after him picking up his red card. So with Guaita, Crystal Palace have provided some nice little defensive returns, especially recently after they've gone on a little bit of run of form over these last couple game weeks. So I think with Guaita, great option to go for if you want to go for a little bit of a cheap goalkeeper. McCarthy's also an option that I looked at 4.6, but I just think if you can get Livramento, who has that attacking threat, you might as well just go for Guaita because his alternative is Mitchell, who's not that attacking. But now going on to our back four, it is a back five with Livramento, but I think most game weeks, these four options will probably be on your starting 11. I'm going to start off with Trent Alexander-Arnold, our most expensive defender, but he just proved why he's so expensive after game week kind of 11, after scoring a goal against West Ham and also getting an assist. Unfortunately, no clean sheet there, and that's my only concern for Trent and Liverpool at the moment, is defensively, they're not looking that assured, and with some tough fixtures coming up, I don't really know how many clean sheets Trent will be getting. But you will notice I've gone kind of fullback crazier with my back four. I've gone for Chilwell, James, Cancelo, and Trent, who all provide that fullback ability of getting those clean sheets, but also getting that attacking return. Going on to our Chelsea double up in defense, if you guys want to go for two Chelsea defenders, I would highly recommend going with Chilwell and also Reece James, just because from an attacking point of view, they look absolutely stellar going forward. Chelsea have also been one of those defenses that have actually been quite assured from a clean sheet point of view, but I think they're currently overperforming their defensive stats, which might be something to check out in these next couple game weeks. One thing to also note with this defense is if there is some rotation between the Chelsea and Cancelo, you do have someone like a Livramento or Huang that can come off the bench and get you some returns. The final defender to go by needs no introduction there, Cancelo, after a really good game week 11, picking up an assist. I think it was 2 assists and a clean sheet and also those bonus points, which led him to about 14 points if memory serves me right. But with Cancelo, almost nailed in that starting 11 under Pep Guardiola, and that's why I couldn't recommend the fullback enough, especially if you guys are going to be wildcarding if you don't really have him with your normal team. But if you guys thought the defense looked quite strong, I mean, just look at that midfield department. I'm going to start off with our kind of Liverpool double up with Diego Jota and also Mo Salah. Mo Salah, nothing to talk about much there. The most essential player to own in FPL at the current moment, and probably will be your permanent captain at least for the next couple game weeks. But Jota comes in here as a nice little differential after Roberto Firmino picked up quite a bad hamstring injury that I'm pretty sure should keep him out for at least the next couple weeks. So 7.5 for a Liverpool attacker is just kind of splendid value per million, especially when you consider how attacking Liverpool have been in this Premier League season. Phil Foden is another option I would definitely go for on the wildcard, even though he hasn't been performing that well over these last couple game weeks. Playing as that false 9 for Man City is always going to create points, and I think you guys might just have to be a little bit patient as he does have a mega haul in him in these next couple game weeks. Our last midfielder to go for has had the form, unlike Phil Foden. That's going to be Smith Rowe from Arsenal, and at 5.7 million, incredible value for money. And the nice thing, if you guys haven't been on FPL Twitter, there has been an image floating around and a thread floating around that Livramento and Smith Rowe kind of rotate perfectly. So you guys can rotate these two options very easily, as you'll see in the team selection coming up shortly. So overall, the defense and the midfield look absolutely superb, but unfortunately the forward department might be a little bit lackluster. So first off, Harry Kane there. Harry Kane hasn't picked up the form that he had last season, but I do expect him, at least over these next 4 games for Spurs. Fixtures look great. I think that Harry Kane, if he has a chance to rebound, this is going to be under the new manager Conte, and it's going to be the time to shine. So that's why I have gone for Kane over someone like a Son, especially because you guys can easily upgrade him to Ronaldo when the United fixtures turn around game week 15 or 16. So a little bit of a foresight here, just kind of looking at the game week data, and I do think you guys want to bring in Ronaldo, and that's how I would kind of go for Kane on a wild card over someone like a Son. And the final forward to go for might be a super controversial here, as he is going to be the Norwich striker Timo Pukki. I know that Norwich haven't looked great, but I think the fixtures coming up look quite strong, and you never kind of know under this new manager, them sacking their old manager after their first win against Brentford in game week 11, which might be a little bit surprising there, but maybe under the new manager can have that always, as we call in FPL, the new manager bounce. Maybe Timo Pukki can go on a nice scoring run from game week 12 onwards. So overall, as I mentioned, the defense and the midfield look stacked. We do have Harry Kane here in case he does pick up some form. A little bit of a differential there in terms of the Spurs forward, and I do think you can easily switch him out for Ronaldo if this punt doesn't come about in the next 4 game weeks. But as I mentioned, I'm going to be going through the Game Week 12 team selection just so you guys can get some clarity on how I would be setting up on a wildcard. So I would be going for a 5-3-2 formation, keeping the front line exactly the same with Kane and Timo Pukki, but I would be dropping Smith Rowe to the bench just because I would rather play Livermore against Norwich, even though Liverpool have been conceding a few in the past couple of game weeks. So this is exactly what I was talking to you guys about with the Livermore Smith Rowe rotation. 1 or 2 game weeks time, you can rotate these guys quite easily, as the fixtures for one of them looks great when the other doesn't have a great fixture. In terms of the backline, not the best fixtures in the world. We have Cancelo against Everton, who have been struggling to score, so I do think that could be a clean sheet for him. But then also have the Chelsea assets against Leicester, and I am a Jamie Vardy owner personally, so I don't really know how to play that. I hope that Jamie Vardy gets on some form before Watford at home in game week 13, but I also, as a Chelsea defensive owner, hope that they rack up a clean sheet. I would also recommend you guys on a wildcard to maybe go for 2 or 3 Chelsea defenders, just because in terms of effective ownership in the higher ranks, they're basically over 200%. So what that means is that if you don't own a Chelsea defender, if they do keep a clean sheet, that's going to be massively against you. But even if you do own a Chelsea defender, you're basically hoping that they don't keep a clean sheet. But I always value you guys' opinions, so drop it down in the comments below. What do you think of this wildcard draft? What would you change? What would you keep? Let me know in the comments down below so we can get a little bit of a debate going. Also, let me know in the comments down below if you guys are wildcarding and what your current draft does look like. But this is basically wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did, and subscribe if you're new and not subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for the regular content coming up next week, the normal ultimate guide, as well as the team selection coming up probably on Thursday evening. I've been signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.